What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another game picks. Obviously, keeping up the trend from last on this channel, and it feels so good to finally have some football once again. Obviously, we are just 2 days away from the Chiefs and Ravens getting everything started on Thursday night. Another NFL season getting ready to begin this Sunday. Our first full slate of Sunday games. We got 13 games on Sunday. We got the game Thursday, we got a Friday game this year. Friday night, week one. These are going to generally stay the same with how we do the picks this year. I'm going to have obviously I'm going to predict every game for that week that is played. I'm going to predict a lock of the week. I'm going to predict a upset of the week, and I'm going to predict a game of the week. So without further ado, let's get another season started. And we start off with opening night, the Kansas City Chiefs for the second straight year, kicking off the NFL season in Arrowhead Stadium, raising another Super Bowl banner into town. It is a rematch of this past January's AFC Championship game. Obviously, this offseason, both these teams made their fair share of additions. The Ravens, maybe the most notable one, is picking up Derrick Henry to go with Lamar Jackson, creating at least what a few years ago would have been a very scary backfield. Right now, the Chiefs obviously continue to add speed this offseason. Obviously they have Rashee Rice. They did bring in Marquise Brown. Obviously we know with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones on defense. We know what this applies for a lot of the week one games. I think this is how it is a lot of years week one. I know it's because of the fact that really haven't, even though you have an idea, of what you think these teams are going to be, you don't, have a definitive answer. You don't actually know until you always say the first week and the last week of the season is really when it's the most unpredictable. Could see going either way. I could see the Ravens coming in here and getting the win. The Lions, ultimately what I think this game is probably going to come down to, though, is I think it's going to come down to defense. I think it's going to come down to which defense shines more. And I think with it being at Arrowhead, and obviously last year I know the Chiefs lost at Arrowhead, but with it being at Arrowhead, it is opening night. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that the Chiefs win this game. It could go either way, but I am definitely leaning towards the Chiefs at this point. That's what I'm going to lock in as my pick to win this game. We move on and we have our Friday night game. It is our first Friday night week one game. It is in Brazil, and it's the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles, two playoff teams from last season. In the path in that young offensive core. They won the playoff game in Dallas. And the future for the Eagles, obviously they had an amazing start to last season. Things kind of fell apart late with the playoff loss in Tampa. They added Saquon Barkley this offseason. They added Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. They really added some youth to their defense. Typically, and with these Brazil games, but to be completely honest, there's games week one that are going to win this game. I actually think the Packers are going to win this game. I really have honestly gotten this feeling really since the schedule game that Green Bay pulls off. I think they're going to continue to build on that momentum that they really started. The Philly is favored in, but I just think, with them having to, it just feels like one of those games. It's week one, typically upsets happen week one. I feel like this is a game that the Packers are going to come out and are going to get the victory. And obviously in a pretty close one, I think Green Bay in the end comes out in this one victorious. Moving into our Sunday slate of games, we got 13 Sunday games for this first weekend. First game we're going to look at, one of them is the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. Honestly, you can kind of maybe call this, a little bit of the gutter bowl. But really, both these teams, you look at the Panthers, obviously the season couldn't have gone worse last year for them than it did. Only 2 wins. There's really nowhere to go but up. Hiring Dave Canales as head coach to really help with that development of Bryce Young. As far as the Saints go, it is another year, Dennis Allen and Derek Carr. They do have a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak. But really, for the most part, it is another year of running things back in New Orleans. You still have a lot of those aging pieces on defense like Cameron Jordan, like Demario Davis. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore, he is not getting any younger either. So there are still, a lot of familiar faces in New Orleans, but they're another year older now. And overall, this is a game that another one I could see going either way. Ultimately, give it to the Saints just because I think, and obviously it's different for a lot of these teams with new head coaches. But I feel like with Carolina, with just how much disarray there was last season, I don't think it can get any worse, as the season goes on. But I just think starting out, I definitely think this is going to be a competitive and close game. But I just personally think that, Dave Canales still getting accustomed to this Panthers team, obviously first-time head coach. Bryce Young having to learn the offense in New Orleans for opening weekend. It is going to still be a tough environment. Though I don't like saying it, they're going to start the season off with a win. Next game we're going to talk about here, another one of those gutter bowl games you could really talk about. The Minnesota Vikings lost Kirk Cousins to the Falcons this offseason. They did pay Justin Jefferson. They do have a solid core of receivers. They drafted J.J. McCarthy in the first round, got Sam Darnold in free agency. McCarthy, goes down with a season-ending injury. It is going to be Sam Darnold starting off the season here versus a Giants team that, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, just there's really not much to be impressed by. Losing Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, I think a lot of people are really wondering how, he got that contract looking back on it. But I do think that, this is another one of those games that I don't really think that these two teams are going to be very good. But in my opinion, it just, honestly, I'm going to go ahead and give the Giants the win here just because You get that feeling, and it feels like this is just going to be one of those games that is probably going to be pretty sloppy football, but the Giants ultimately are going to come out and find a way to pick up the win, because even though Minnesota, I honestly do think still has the better team, I think they're in, kind of a, bad situation this year. This is just not their year. And obviously the first week of the season, anything can happen. I'm going to go ahead, going to give this one to the Giants here. Next game we have, it is the New England Patriots and the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's return game. The big question, I think, for this one for the Bengals, are they going to be able to get a deal done with Jamar Chase where he does suit up and play this Sunday? I think that is a very big issue that the Bengals are going to have to get addressed pretty quickly. Now, to be fair, they did pay Joe Burrow a few days before the season last year. So they kind of do have a track record of getting these deals done late. However, I think with the Patriots, and obviously it's not expected to be a good season in New England, but I do think that you look at this game, and initially I kind of looked down like the Bengals should take care of business. With it being Jacoby Brissett, and even though Brissett is obviously, he's not a superstar quarterback, it's also not like he's awful either. He is a serviceable quarterback. Now, obviously the team around him is not very good. But another thing about it is the Bengals do not typically play good week one. Typically, they always come out and have sloppy performances to start out the season. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to give the Bengals the win here, but I think it's going to be a close game. I do think that New England, maybe even they do lead for a big portion of the game, but ultimately the Bengals come back and win because they are the better team. But I do think this is going to be a close game. I think New England could have a chance, just because of the fact Cincinnati typically does not always start the season off very hot. Next game we have here, obviously my Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Raheem Morris at head coach, starting off the season here versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith at offensive coordinator, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. For the Steelers, Russell Wilson's going to start. Justin Fields will be playing. Mike Tomlin has confirmed it. We got every reason to believe that's going to be the case. Kirk Cousins, obviously the offense and the new additions that have been made to the defense also. I'm going to keep this pretty shortcut because I do plan on talking about this game more in depth later in the week. But I'm going to go ahead, and if you watch my season predictions video, it's the same thing. I think the Falcons are going to take care of business here because I honestly think we have to. We got to win our home opener. The Falcons have to win their first game of the season. They have to start this thing off right. You cannot let Pittsburgh come in and get the win. You got to start this thing off right. And honestly, I think even though, yes, you have Kirk Cousins, you're going to need your running game to step up. And you're going to want to see your defense make some plays when you need them to. Be able to take care of whatever happens and whatever Pittsburgh decides to do with both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. You're going to have to be ready for that stuff. But I'm ultimately going to give the Falcons a win, moving to 1-0 on the season. Next game we have here, another division matchup, this time in the AFC South. We have the Houston Texans, who obviously came out of nowhere last season, had an amazing season, and really head into this season as kind of like a league favorite, I guess you can say. A lot of people excited about the Texans, what C.J. Stroud and that offense could be with DeMeco Ryans at head coach. Going up against an Indianapolis Colts team that, we saw go 9-8 last year. We saw them really overachieve after Anthony Richardson went down early in the season. Obviously, he's getting another crack at it. And this is another one that it is tough to predict. It's a division game. But at the same time, I honestly get that feeling that the Colts are actually going to win this game. It is a home game. There is excitement about Anthony Richardson. And in my opinion, I think as long as we really see Indy quarterback in there, and the fact that the Texans, it's obviously they are in line for another good season, but it is a division game, starting off. It just feels like that type of game that the Colts, are gonna, fare well in. And I think ultimately Cardinals, Kyler Murray back at quarterback for another season. Western New York to take for the Bills. Josh Allen still at quarterback. Feeling for the Bills as the past few years they really have been seen as one of the favorites. Now it kind of feels like they're, just one of the teams stuck in the crop in the AFC. Now I'm gonna be honest, a lot of these games were tough to predict, and I could see going either way. And obviously, week one, anything can happen. But I'm gonna go ahead and say this is my lock of the week. I do think that the Bills will come out and take care of business versus the Cardinals. Just because the fact it is a long travel, and even though the Cardinals, they did pick up Marvin Harrison in the draft, it still, really does not feel like the type of game that they are going to thrive in. Now, granted, it being the first week of the season, it was tough to predict a lock of the week because even this game, you don't know what's going to happen the first week of the season. But I think as long as the Bills come out, they do what they need to do. I still think they're the better team in this game. I think they should get the win here. Next game we have here is obviously, one that a lot of people are going to be looking at. Caleb Williams' NFL debut in Chicago at home in Soldier Field versus the Tennessee Titans. And there's a lot of expectations for, the Chicago team this year. Picking up Caleb Williams at quarterback, there's a lot of people at off team, that they have to get better at this point, especially with the weapons he has been surrounded. In Callahan, and they brought in, some weapons this offseason. They really retooled their offense over the course of one offseason. They got Calvin Ridley, they got Tony Pollard, they still do have DeAndre Hopkins. And when you look at the defensive side of the ball, they traded for L'Jarius Sneed. They just traded for Ernest Jones from the Rams. The Titans have made their fair share of additions this offseason. They have definitely been active, and they're really hoping that they can, be present in a very crowded AFC South and AFC this year. But with this being in Chicago and with this being Caleb Williams' first game, even though this is another one of those games, you could absolutely see the Titans winning it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this one to the Bears and Caleb Williams. Just because I think, with it being the matter of fact that it is in Chicago, obviously there's going to be a lot of energy. Bears fans have waited a really long time to feel like they actually have a quarterback. And whether you like him or not, you got to admit, Caleb Williams, is a damn good quarterback. And at least from what we saw in college, and that could definitely translate in the NFL. So with that being said, I'm going to give the Bears the win here. Next game we have here, this was honestly one of the toughest games to predict of the week because you could kind of see either team winning this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars to take on a Dolphins team that it really kind of feels like, they have obvious. Just they feel like there is always a offense. It could be the weather. It could be the team they're facing. That's just how it is. This was a tough game for me to predict because you could definitely see either team winning this. You would probably say it being in Miami. The Dolphins will just get that feeling once again. Like, honestly, with week one, I do that you get. And that can come back and bite you. But I also think, you really look at a lot of these games, you really don't know what to expect yet. So you kind of got to go with what your gut tells you. And in my, opinion, I think that Jacksonville has obviously added to their offense this offseason. They locked up Trevor Lawrence, gave him the massive extension, bringing Ryan Nielsen over as their defensive coordinator. I love that move for them. I believe that they can go down to Miami, they can get the win, and they can start off 1-0. Heading into the late window, heading into the 4 o'clock games, we start off in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, where we got another rookie starts in Denver, in Seattle, where they have a new head coach in Mike McDonald. Geno Smith still at quarterback in Seattle also. And personally, the way I view it is this. Bo Nix having to go into a very tough environment week one. It's just hard to see, them winning this game. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give it to Seattle in a pretty low-scoring game. I don't see this, getting out of hand with the score or anything. I think this could honestly be a defensive game. But ultimately, the Seahawks, with it being, first game of the season at home in Lumen Field, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give them the win here. Next game we have, it is Jim Harbaugh's return to as head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers with Justin Herbert as his quarterback. And we got another division game here with the Chargers hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I see a lot of people really don't expect a lot out of the Chargers, but I've always kind of maintained this, and I still do. I think any Jim Harbaugh coach expectations. We saw it when he was in San Francisco, and we saw it for much of his times. And the way I view it is that, obviously the Raiders are really one of those teams you don't know what to expect from them in many ways this year. I got to go ahead and I got to give the Chargers this one. I think they're going to start the season off with a win just because I think for several reasons. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to want to start off his return to the NFL right situation, a lot of other factors. They're really not a plausible team, I think. Anyways, game we have here, and it's another debut. This time, Tom Brady, obviously the greatest football player, arguably of all time, obviously the greatest quarterback of all time, the GOAT. He's going to be in the booth with Kevin Burkhardt on Fox for America's Game of the Week as the Dallas Cowboys go up to Cleveland and face the Cleveland Browns. And this is another one of those games that, is and just it feels like it could go either way. On one hand, you could see the Cowboys winning this game, but I feel like Dallas is really us with everything that's set up for them this year, even though they did pay CeeDee Lamb. Are, looking to see Deshaun Watson rebound from the injury. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this one to the Browns. I think that they are going to pull away with this game. Because I it just feels like that them, obviously they have the home field. It feels like this is the type of game that they pull away with here in week one. We have here the Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels at quarterback. So another rookie quarterback debut in week one, going down to Texas. And I'm high on Washington this year. I definitely think they could be special later in the season. But I really feel like this is just another one of those games. I get the feeling that this is just a game that Tampa is going to win. Probably isn't going to be all that special, but that the Buccaneers off that, I just feel like that's probably how it's going to go. Washington getting things figured out. Now we have Sunday Night Football, another playoff rematch back to Detroit. Obviously, we all remember that electric playoff game from last year. And who knows, we might get a repeat of that as the Rams going to Ford Field to take on the Lions. Obviously, the Lions, very exciting season last year. So the excitement, once again, the expectation, once again, is that the Lions are going to be one of the top teams in the NFC and be a major contender. I think we're in store for another good game. I really do. I think that this is going to be a, really good game ultimately. And it's kind of been a minute since we've gotten, a good week one Sunday night game. The past few years, I really remember they've all been blowouts. And obviously, you hope that isn't the case again this year. And I think it's going to be a close game. I do. But once again, with it being in Ford Field, with that atmosphere, I got to give this one to the Lions. I just do. It feels like even to, go into Ford Field and get his win, it feels like the Lions and all that energy that's surrounding them again. It's going to be week one, and it's going to feel like a playoff atmosphere. It just feels like that the Lions are going to, get the win here. They're going to be victorious. And our final game of the week, and man, is this a big one. The San Francisco 49ers, the NFC champions. Obviously, the Super Bowl was very disappointing for them last year, losing a second Super Bowl in 4 years to the Chiefs. They are on Monday Night Football to start the season off at home, and they're hosting Aaron Rodgers, and they're hosting the New York Jets, and we know what happened 1 year ago, this exact same setting with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he tore the Achilles. He missed all of last season after only like 2 snaps. And I really honestly think that this is just a storyline-driven game. Filled with storylines, filled almost like it is cinema of some sorts. And it's probably going to be a very close game that comes down to the very end. And look, a lot of people, I really that you can say go one way or another, but a lot of people don't know how to feel about the Jets this year. Have a chance, and I think the Jets are going to come in here week one, barring Aaron Rodgers getting injured again. Hopefully, it doesn't happen. Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. I think that the Jets can pull this off. I'm going to go ahead and say this is my upset of the week, and this is my game of the week. I think we're going to get several good games in week one. I think the Rams-Lions game is going to be a very good game. I think, obviously the opening game between the Ravens and Chiefs, could be a really good game. I think all the primetime games have, potential to be good games. But it feels like this game is one of those storyline driven games. And obviously, as far as upset of the week goes, there's several games you could have put there. But just because the fact I don't think a lot of people are really high on the Jets, maybe kind of see them as a mess. I think that as long as Aaron, and I'm going to go ahead and say that they get the win here. So, 1 week down, 17 more to go. Obviously, very excited for another season to begin. Appreciate you all for watching. I will be putting out, obviously, it's football season, so I'm back to putting out content. Y'all know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, share it out. You know the drill.